Hello everyone, myself Brunda. I am studying at Sri Venkateshwara College of Engineering in 5th sem in Information Science and Engineering Department. Let me look over from the course Database Management System about data models. The contents are introduction, types of relational data model, advantages of data models, disadvantages of data models, and conclusion. Introduction. What is data model? A data model in database management system is the concept of tools that are developed to summarize the description of the database. The data model which provide about the description of database. Data model provide us with a transparent picture of data which helps us in creating an actual database. With the help of the data model, we can create an actual database. It shows us from the design of the data to its proper implementation of the data. With the help of the data model, we can implement the data in a proper way. Types of relational data model. We have three types: conceptual data model, representational data model, and physical data model. Let me look over one by one in details. Conceptual data model. What is conceptual data model? The conceptual data model describes the database at a very high level and it is used to understand the needs or requirement of the database. Conceptual data model is a high level data model. In this model, this is used in the requirement gathering process. Before the database designers start making a particular database, one should popular model is the ER model. What is ER model? It is an entity relationship model. Specializes in entities, relationship and even attributes that are used by the database designer. For design any database, we need an entities, relationship and the attributes. Entity relationship model, ER model. It is a high-level data model which is used to define the data and the relationships between them. It is basically a conceptual design of any database which is easy to design the view of data. There are three components: entity, attributes and relationship. An entity is referred to as a real-world object. It can be a name, place, object, class, etc. These are represented by a rectangle in an ER diagram. In the ER diagram, we represent entity in a rectangle. Attribute. An attribute can be defined as the description of the entity. These are represented by ellipse in an ER diagram. It can be age, roll number or marks for a student. For the entity student, which is represented in rectangle, where the attributes will be marked in ellipse, or the age, roll number and marks or phone number, anything we can take the attribute for the student entity. Relationship. Relationships are used to define relations among different entities. Among different entities, from one entity to other entity, we use the relationship to define. Let me look over representational model. This type of model is used to represent only the logical part of the database and does not represent the physical structure of the database. The representational model is also called as a logical model. We can represent only the logical part. In the representational model, we cannot represent the physical structure of the database. The representational model, data model, allows to focus primarily on the design part of the database. In representation model, we can know only how to design the database. A popular representational data model is a relational model. The relational model consists of relational algebra and relational calculus. In the relational model, we basically use tables to represent our data and the relationships between them. In the representational model, which is a popularly relational model, in the relational model, we use to represent our data in the form of the tables. It is a theoretical concept whose practical implementation is done in a physical data model. In the representational data model, we use the relational model to represent tables, our data, which is only the it is only the theoretical concept. The practical implementation is done in the physical data model. It is in that type. The advantages of using a representational data model is to provide a foundation to form the base for physical data model. We have seen the representation data model is only to represent the logical part. For the physical part, it is a base. Let me look over physical data model. The physical data model is used to practically implement relational data model. We have seen in the relational data model is only the theoretical concept. For implementing it, we using the physical data model. Ultimately, all data in a database is stored physically on a secondary storage device such as disk and tapes. We store the database in the secondary storage devices like disk and tapes. This is stored in the form of files, records, and certain other data structures. It has all the information on the format in which the files are present and the structure of the databases, the presence of external data structures and their relation to each other. Here we basically save tables in memory so they can be easily accessed efficiently. In order to come up with a good physical model, we have to work on the relational model in a better way. There are some other data models: hierarchical data model, network model, object-oriented data model, float data model, context data model, and semi-structured data model. Advantages of data model. What are the advantages of data model? Data models helps us in representing data accurately. With the help of the data model, we can represent data in the accurate way. It helps us in finding the missing data and also in minimizing data redundancy. Data model provides data security in a better way, where others cannot access data with the help of the data model. The data model should be detailed enough to be used for building the physical database. With the help of the relational data model, we build the physical data model. The information in the data model can be used for defining the relationship between tables, primary and foreign keys, and stored procedures. Let me look over about the disadvantages of data model. In the case of a vast database, sometimes it becomes difficult to understand the data model. You must have the proper knowledge of SQL to use physical models. Even smaller change made in structure require modification in the entire application. There is no set data manipulation language in DBMS. To develop data model, one should know physical data stored characteristics. Let me look over conclusion part. Data modeling is the process of developing data model for the data to be stored in database. Data models ensure consistency in naming conventions, default values, semantics, security while ensuring quality of the data. Data model structure helps to define the relational table, primary and foreign keys and stored procedures. There are three types of conceptual, logical and physical data model. The main aim of the conceptual model is to establish the entities, their attribute and their relationship. We have looked over about the ER relationship. Logical data model defines the structure of the data elements and set the relationship between them. A physical data model describes the database specific implementation of the data model. The main goal of designing data model is to make certain that data objects is offered by the functional team are represented accurately. The biggest drawback is that even smaller change made in the structural require the modification in the entire application. If we change any one thing in the database, we need to require change ultimately all the modifications. Thank you.